Welcome to the setup. On today's episode, I want to talk about the features of the 3 sprayers that I use on the farm. So I'm going to talk about the 200-gallon model first. Again, the capacity is large. That's awesome. It's got booms with nozzles, and I think it covers, it's 30 feet. So that also is a pretty good span. I wouldn't want something that's much less than 30. You just got way too many trips back and forth. And again, you're crushing too much of whatever it is that you're spraying. This one runs off the PTO. So if we get down in here, you'll be able to see how that's hooked up. But all you have to do to make the sprayer work is to turn the PTO on. And then if you want it to stop spraying, you just hit the PTO off. So it's really handy when you're going to the end of the field and you want to turn around or whatever. You don't have to reach back to the valve and turn it on or off. You can just mash the PTO off and it just stops spraying. Make your turn, get lined back up again, and then pop the PTO and away you go. So that's pretty handy for shutting off, and it doesn't do a lot of leaking. Once the pressure's off, these nozzles, they do a pretty good job of holding the chemical in. So this runs off a main controller. So I can adjust, well, I should tell you exactly what all options I have as far as which booms I can spray. Okay, I can spray just the left and the right, left, center, right, of course that's all of them, and then center boom, left and center, and right and center. So I've got the option with this valve controller to determine exactly which booms are dropping chemical. So I can reach that out the back of the tractor. There's some shut-off valves, pressure adjust valve. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, if you ran one of these, this one does, a pretty good job of giving you all the options that you need for putting the spray down in whatever pattern you need. It's got a filter so that, if you're pulling something through that, whether it's a little bit of grass that got in the tank or maybe the chemical sat too long and it started to solidify, that filter will pick it up, and then you can shut off the main shut off. You can take the filter, clean it, put it back on again, and you're ready to go. And that's really good, because if you don't do that, it runs through and then it plugs up the nozzles right away. So you want to make sure you got a good filter system. This one's got a spray wand, which I don't use. I mean, it'd be really handy, I think, if you were spraying maybe thistle patches or multiflora rose or whatever it might be. But if I was going to do that, I'd probably be running one of these a lot smaller sprayers. That's pretty much it. I like the fact that it's on the 3-point, so I can raise it and lower it depending upon what I'm spraying over. It's starting to sink a little bit, but I can raise this thing up so it's probably close to 4 feet off the ground with the nozzles, maybe even a little bit higher than that. So that's pretty handy if you're trying to spray over, maybe corn that's, starting to grow a little bit, or maybe you're trying to kill some taller grasses where, if it's too low, then you don't get your distribution of your spray pattern. So that's the 200-gallon model. We'll move on to the next one. So now I'm going to talk about this 65-gallon 3-point hitch electric model. And like I said, this is probably my favorite overall sprayer of the 3 that I've got here. This one also is made by Wildlife Farming, and I did move the boom on this one. So I did make a little bit of modification to this. It was set to be bolted to the deck, and that's just too low. So I took the spot where you connect the wand, the spray wand, I removed the spray wand, and I fastened the 3 booms, boomless, whatever you want to call it, that unit, I fastened it on the sprayer right there. Now I'm a little bit higher up so that I can spray over the top of grass, or if I'm spraying into corn, and the corn's more than a few inches tall, I'm not just going to hit the sides, of whatever it is I'm spraying, and then the chemical drops. You need it to fan out and go over the top. So setting it up a little bit higher, so I did modify what I got from those guys, but not a lot. See what other features do I like about it. Again, the 3-point allows you to raise and lower it real easily. This one is starting to creep down because this old tractor, the hydraulics aren't holding very well, but normally it's going to be probably close to 4 feet is where my my nozzles are going to be. So that gives me pretty good, pretty good coverage. And this does go 30 feet also, roughly, again with no wind. You throw wind into the equation and all bets are off as to exactly how much coverage you're getting. And like I said, that's the downfall of the boomless. Not only is it more difficult in the wind, but it's also more difficult to control where the spray goes if you're going into something that's just a little bit taller, because it hits the sides of the plants rather than coming down on top. So that can be a problem. So there are limits to what you can do with a boomless sprayer really well. So let's talk some more about features. This one has something that I really like, and that's the ability to recycle what's in the tank. So I don't like putting my chemical in first and then putting all the water in and then having it all foam up, and it's kind of messy. So what I like to do is fill the tank, then put the chemical in, and then I can use this recycler, and you just turn the pump on with this thing set to go through the system and back into the tank. So all it's doing is stirring or mixing the chemical that's in there. That's pretty handy. I can turn off or on any one of these 3 nozzles separately. It's nothing fancy. It's just right at the side of the nozzle. You just turn it on or off. So you have to get off and say I only want the center because I'm trying to spray something really narrow. Then you turn the 2 outsides off. It does a nice job. I mean, I've had some of these that do a really poor job of holding the chemical when you turn the pump off. They continue to drain. But this one does a really good job of that. If I turn it off, it doesn't drip anymore out of the nozzles. So that's a big deal, because I hated on some of these other models where you turn it off at the end of the field and you're just going to go 100 yards and spray another spot. You have to jump off the tractor, run in the back, and then manually turn off the flow to the nozzles, which is a real pain. So that's a really handy feature. I mean, otherwise it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing about this stuff that's really high tech. If something breaks down, I mean, it's pretty easy to fix it. There's nothing, like I said here, that's going to be daunting where you have to hire a mechanic. If it's not working, it's pretty easy to fix. Okay, so let's move on to the 4-wheeler. Last but not least, I'm going to talk about the sprayer that I've got on this 4-wheeler. It's a 25-gallon model, and this one here is actually the way that the sprayer is set up. It's probably high enough for most situations. The one on the tractor, the little 3-point hitch electric model on the tractor, was just too low. But my spraying level here is what is it? It's about waist height. So it's enough to cover most things. If I have to spray over something that's taller than that, I'm either going to get a banded spray pattern because it's just hitting and not spreading out, or I'm gonna have to use something else, a different one of my sprayers. But and then the other thing you can do too, I guess, if you're trying to kill something that's too tall, you can mow it and then come back and kill it later. But that's not going to help you if you're trying to spray over the top of, say, standing corn. So anyway, keep that in mind. The height of where the nozzles are at matters. I could figure out some way to mount this higher probably, but this system actually works pretty well. Again, it's the same exact boomless system that was on that 3-point hitch electric sprayer on the little tractor. 3 nozzles, can be manually turned on and off. The outside 2, you can adjust the angle that they spray upward at. They recommend 15-degree outward spray angle. Sometimes I change that depending on what I'm trying to do. If I don't want to throw it up, sometimes I spray it even downward just a little bit if I'm trying to cover something that's on the side of the sprayer that I can't drive over and hit with the middle one. I might turn one of the outside ones down just a little bit, so I'm spraying more at a downward angle, so I'm not throwing it quite as far. So anyway, there's a lot of flexibility built into this. The nice thing about this one, this has got some really cool features that I was impressed with. It has the same exact setup that the other one has, again, the 3-point hitch electric one. I can turn it to recycle, to stir or mix the chemicals in the tank, which is really nice. I can turn on and off the booms right behind the operator. There's the same valving system is right here, but it's like right behind me. So I can just reach back and flick them off. But of course, you want to use the on-off, 12 volt adjustable, whatever you call that thing, the switch. That's what you need to do to turn it on and off. But if you're going to say, well, I'm done for the day, or I want to switch between, the booms and the circulator, you can do that right there without having to get off the tractor and go do it. So there's a lot of flexibility built into it. Again, the nozzles don't leak, so when you turn that switch off, there's no more chemical coming out, which is super nice. Again, I can't stress that enough, where you don't have to get off and manually click some kind of a shut-off valve in order to keep it from continuing to dribble out while you're driving around. That's a big deal. So there's not much else to this. It hooks up to the battery on the four-wheeler. Pretty simple system. There's just little clips that go in there that you snap onto the positive and the negative terminals on the battery. And then the switch is right there handy right next to you while you're driving. I usually run probably somewhere around 3 to 4 miles per hour is my guess. You'll have to calibrate it yourself, but that gets me roughly 10 gallons per acre, more or less. So if you think about it in those terms, that might at least get you started, as far as having the right calibration when you get on this thing the first time. One more feature on this sprayer that I really like, so many of them, the filter on these small ATV units are on the pickup down in the tank. So if the filter starts to plug, it's like, oh man, what a mess, because somehow you got to get down through all that chemical and get that filter cleaned off, and it's just a nightmare. Well, this one, it's got the little filter screen on the outside of the sprayer. So it comes out of the sprayer unfiltered, and then it hits like a little screen before it goes to the pump. Well, there's a shut-off valve there, so I can shut off anything coming from the tank to the filter screen. Then I can unloosen it, clean the screen, and then hook it back up again. I don't have chemical running everywhere. I don't have to somehow find a way to reach down in there and clean it off. Again, I've dealt with a lot of sprayers over the years, and that's a definite nightmare. And this one has got that fixed. So that's another, I would say, maybe it's not unique to this model, but it's definitely a feature that you'd want. Hopefully you found something in this episode that was useful to you. Some pretty good sprayers here that we use on the farm. Well, I appreciate you joining me. I'll see you back here soon for the next episode of The Setup. And remember to always dream big.